Well, welcome back to another episode of Lighthouse Labs. Today, we're going to turn up the temperature, probably why the AC is still running, and talk about firewalls. Um, they may not be one of the quote sexiest things to talk about in terms of your business, but they are one of the most important things that you can do. And what I want to do is just talk a little bit about um, Lighthouse's progression, some of the selections and some of the changes, as well as the latest change that we're making to a new firewall vendor and why Lighthouse is making that particular change. So we'll start off, I've got five of the various brands that we have sold over the years. And you can kind of see sort of as we grow and mature, you can see some of the things that that really make these special. I want to highlight one, why we would have selected these as vendors in the beginning, why we moved away from them, and what we're using now. And then at the end, I'm going to introduce you into taking a look at the current firewall that we've got and take a peek at the experience. Probably something you don't normally get to see very often, and why we think it's really important. So when we first started off, we were really looking for a firewall vendor that was reasonably priced and was fully featured. And in the beginning, we've settled on DrayTek. Now, DrayTek is a very infrequently known brand in the United States. They are built in Taiwan, as probably a lot of these actually are. But one of the things that was really great is these were superior in terms of performance. They had a custom operating system instead of a modified version of Linux, which you'll start to see is kind of the norm for a lot of these. But they had their own kernel and everything, to the point where these will boot up in 10 seconds or less, as well as the fact that many of them had USB ports on them that you could plug in hard drives or printers, and they could host those devices as shares. Top of that, they supported multi-WAN right out of the box and had a whole slew of QoS features. Despite the fact that these performed really well, the major issue we had was managing these devices at scale. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't have a way to manage at scale. DrayTek does have a cloud or a self-hosted, it's not a cloud managed solution, but it was fairly finicky at best. But still, one of my kind of like unsung heroes as we started off were these DrayTeks, just simply because, well, they were $300 and they competed in a realm of thousands of dollars. They were also super fast and some of the best performing devices you could possibly see. Some of the next gen features, the licensing was convoluted, used a lot of poor signatures, things like that. And the cloud management, or the central management, I guess we could say, was very clunky. That made us have to start considering alternative solutions. About that time, we started hearing about a vendor called Meraki. And Meraki was promising to become the Apple of networking equipment. At the time, they only sold firewalls. Actually, they really only sold like 3 firewalls, a real low-end version, and then a couple of kind of higher tiered end. And when we first started, they were known for firewalls and access points, and the firewalls were brand new on the market. Heavily invested in the early days by Google, Meraki provided a cloud-first mentality where the devices were managed by the cloud, allowing you to drop ship the device anywhere in the world and be able to provision it right out of the box. It pretty much just needed to be able to talk to the internet one time and self-configure. That meant that if you needed to, you might still need some hands to do a static IP address, but realistically, you could just plug them in behind the network, get the config, and then swap out the equipment. Took no knowledge. To this day, if you take a look, a lot of stores such as things like Dollar General, Taco Bell, they use these devices because it allows them to maintain a central infrastructure for their higher level IT, but not need on-site knowledge on how to work things. They're very cool for their self-healing capabilities. So why did we start moving away from them? Well, despite a full feature set and getting better and better, Meraki has this kind of two things going against it. The first one is what the industry calls the Meraki tax. You have to pay an annual subscription to these devices or else they just stop working. Now, for many companies, you do a 10-year and then you swap them out. You buy these long-term contracts. And the value of these giant enterprises really showed, as I said, like if you're talking about a Dollar General, they're very easy to set up and their auto VPN is very resilient. But a company called Cisco really took interest into Meraki, purchased them, and has done not only quite a bit of good, but also quite a bit of bad. The licensing is becoming more and more cluttered, as is the case of a lot of Cisco. They're integrating the Meraki firmware into Catalyst switches. So there's now Meraki firmware for non-Meraki/Cisco devices and Cisco devices that can run Meraki firmware and what have you. And so there's sort of some confusion in the marketplace. Still a great device, but it was enough to make us realize, like, at the end of the day, we wanted to be able to sell the same equipment to every single one of our clients. Back when we were on the DrayTeks, they were very inexpensive. And if you didn't pay for the subscriptions or the advanced feature sets, that was fine. It was still the same firewall for every single client. This required us to be more centralized. So then what ends up happening is we have some clients on this brand, some clients on this brand, and now you need specialists for both. We shortly got introduced to a very interesting, and you'll kind of laugh, our first foray into open source is a company called Untangle. These were firewalls that were built on open source software, but had premium feature sets that were licensable. Started work with Untangle, and these devices were great because they had a lot of reporting capabilities, effectively a highly modified Linux stack that the Untangle device would run and operate on. The real trick in real sort of amazing things in the Untangle is its separation of its various apps that it had as part of its next-gen systems, but also its reporting. There was a ton of reporting and analysis and dashboards that you could do, to the point where these devices, while they had a substantially higher learning curve, were very attractive. And the other thing that was really nice is, remember I said, with these devices, we needed to make sure that we paid the Meraki tax. We needed to make sure that we had licensing. And as a result, we could only send these to clients that are willing to pay that high dollars. You're talking $600, $700, $800 for the firewall, plus at least $300 to $400 a year for it if you just wanted basic licensing. If you wanted advanced security, generally the price of the license was double. These devices were quite a bit cheaper. They were more in line with our DrayTek series and didn't require licensing unless you wanted the next-gen features. This allowed us to standardize on clients. Another thing that was really great about these devices is that they eventually would introduce a thing called Command Center. Command Center allowed that as part of your premium feature. So for us, a lot of our managed clients would have this. Allowed us to manage and centrally control and apply templates and backup solutions directly to the devices. Made it very easy for basic troubleshooting, while the Command Center itself never really developed into something very cool as a centralized dashboard. It did allow us the ability to manage these devices without opening up any insecure ports at all and establishing a secure tunnel through the Command Center relay proxy right into the devices. So basic monitoring, templating, some great things like that. Zero Trust never really quite pans out on these, but something real interesting comes along, and admittedly, they started developing an SD-WAN product that really caught the eye of another company. Why do we go away from Untangle? We don't actually technically go away from them. What we end up instead is Untangle gets purchased by Arista. Arista, wanting an SD-WAN product in the marketplace, purchases Untangle, revamps it, and then actually does a lot to start sort of pushing and moving the needle a little bit in the SD-WAN. As a result, very similar pricing structure, very similar hardware. The updates come, and so you'll start seeing the Arista name a little bit more than the Untangle name as we get together. The devices start to look a little bit more, enterprise grade, campusy, and we actually go and take a look at quite a bit of the Arista stack. Far and away, the Arista stack is a very, very cool platform. In fact, in the enterprise sector, and data centers, this is one of your fastest growing brands, taking over Cisco and Juniper in terms of its adoption. Very likely, if you are watching me on this through some hosted solution, newsflash, you are, you very likely are running through an Arista switch setup. However, they sort of decide that the SD-WAN product may need a little bit more work than they thought. And so what happens is Arista has decided just very recently that they're going to purchase, they actually purchased another company called VeloCloud, and very recently decided that they are going to begin phasing out the Arista firewalls. While we were really excited by the idea of the switches and access points, when you really start getting into it, the Arista devices are more expensive than most of our solutions in our market and our industry. And finding that sort of return on investment, despite the fact that there is some AI troubleshooting that allows you to query the devices and simply say, hey, I have a user that's reporting issues with Teams every day at 2:00. It can go through and it can analyze all of that reporting and then provide you with packet captures if you want, as it goes through and it creates its own triggers. That is great, but that is not a high portion of our business. We're able to maintain a lot simpler networks, and they stay up and running pretty easily. So with that bad news, we just really couldn't have our clients be able to be in a price point that the Aristas make sense. With the impending shutdown of what used to be the Untangle line in favor of the VeloCloud solution, we knew that we either needed to look at VeloCloud or look at a new provider. By this point in time, we had some on and off again. We're very much the Ross and Rachel with a company called Checkpoint. Now, Checkpoint is a very interesting provider that you may not recognize that name as you're sitting out there. But I actually have a book out in one of our libraries for version 1 of the Checkpoint Firewall. It's been around since the 90s. They've always just been chugging along. They're largely enterprise-based, but very recently they've wanted to make a splash in the SMB market, to the point where their security solutions aren't just about what they can do in the firewall, but they've created a cohesive brand that follows along creating centralized security. Now, unlike a lot of brands that tell you that this is something that they want to do, they're actually doing it. Whether you're looking for a web application firewall, or you're looking for zero trust security, you're looking for on-premise security, email security, all of these items, plus a whole bunch more, are all integrated into a system and are able to communicate with their next-gen AI called Threat Cloud. By using Threat Cloud, their Threat Cloud AI, they're able to determine threats and attacks before anybody even knows what's going on. We can detect it and notify devices. So this means that your email filters could identify spammers a lot faster because we're seeing the traffic from even firewalls. This is very interesting, and one of the things that we really like, because this allows us to take one solution, one vendor that is highly motivated on security and begin looking at it. In fact, their email security platform is based on one of our longtime partners called Avanan. Avanan is an AI and self-learning spam filter, phishing filter, and sort of email security gateway that has been revamped to work with Threat Cloud. As a result, we had to give them a really fair shake. And what I found with their 2000 series of the Quantum Sparks is I found a device that was very easy to pick up, learn, and the central management system, not required, but easy to implement, gives us so much more information than anything we've seen in any of the reportings. The Meraki comes really close, but not quite. And knowing that we have the power of Threat Cloud tied into protecting our clients, we're actually seeing way more attack vector data in terms of who's trying to get into our clients, how they're trying to do it, as well as the impending blockage. We now have a much better idea of what's happening at the client's edge as a result of the checkpoint solutions. Some other real simple things is the hardware is very well spec'd. And at its core, while these are Linux devices, these checkpoint Sparks, the Quantum Sparks, are built on ARM-based processors, which is fairly unique for the checkpoint line. But they do a really good job of bridging the gap for their enterprise solutions, as well as into these devices. The operating system that they run is called Gaia, specifically on these devices, and it is a highly modified version of Linux. But we can apply templates and security so that we make sure that clients are able to have consistent application of what Lighthouse processes and procedures are to make sure that we keep as much safe as possible. But they're highly customizable as well. And they don't need to be independently managed either. We talk a little bit about these devices giving us the ability to manage them, do all of that, but having to pay those high subscription fees. These devices are much more reasonably priced, have a ton of security behind them, and a very reasonable cost point for the small business market. There's also quite a bit of hardware here. So we've been really excited as we begin to introduce these checkpoint devices over the past few months to the point where we have quite a bit already out there running at our client sites, and they're very incredible. And I've even had to call tech support a couple of times, despite the fact that these devices are very easy to learn and pick up. And I said a lot there, but as we transition, we truly believe that the checkpoint is going to be one of the best next generation firewalls that we've come in all of our history. And it sort of checks all of the boxes of being able to apply this to every single one of our clients, no matter where they're coming from or what their purpose is. Starting with the 2530 that you see here that even has Wi-Fi built in if you want it, all the way up to their larger ones in the 2000 series, the 2580s and 2590s. We have quite a bit of power that can run these devices, and they're designed for next-gen bandwidth utilization. So what makes these so cool? I'd like to take you behind the scenes and show you a little bit of what it's like to work with these firewalls. Even though you may be one of our clients or you might be interested in our solutions, why does Lighthouse love the devices like these? I'd like to show you in sort of a rare behind the scenes look. Let's take a look. All right, so we're back. This time we're going to take a look at the behind the scenes of our checkpoint software. Now, I'm already sort of inside the Lighthouse version of what we have. And what is great about this is that as an organization, we can monitor all of our clients from a single dashboard, keeping an eye on trends that are going on. Now, in our lab environment here, you can see right here, without even logging into the firewall, we're getting all kinds of information. We can see the number of times that perhaps the system has been attempted at as an attack, or whether or not we have assets on the inside that seem to be misbehaving, all of those items, and we can trigger alerts right from the system to go straight into our help desk. Very cool, very simple. And what's also great is all of the information just at our fingertips. So if we want to take a look at what type of utilization we're going through, what types of websites are being visited, if there's any system issues that were being found, internet usage, are we seeing a lot of unstable internet connections, things like that. We can monitor the VPN connections and make sure everything's looking good. Verify that people who are accessing remotely are okay, as well as see all of the devices that happen to show up on the back end. This device even has Wi-Fi, although not common for the units that we plan on selling, but typically supporting since we have our partnership with Alta. But if you're a smaller organization, why not throw it all in one box and be able to have access as well? The Dr. Spark is this really cool sort of system that it goes through, runs all kinds of verification tests and makes sure that everything is good, and then gives us a compliance report that tells us, hey, look, here's some things that we can do to make this firewall better. And again, just having all of this information right at our fingertips. And another great thing is that it supports all of this. Plus, we can have standardized plans. And so we can make sure that as we support our clients, there's a consistency that other places just don't have. Even down to our traffic monitor, there's just so much. But then, of course, it's not just about being able to monitor it. We sometimes need to get in and help you out. And inside the system, what I've really, really liked about these checkpoint systems is, this is going to kind of sound silly, but maybe you've talked to us on and we were helping you out, and maybe we needed you to reboot a piece of equipment. It sounds like such a silly thing, but what I love is that we can access, when we remote right into this firewall, you can see a picture of the firewall sitting right here, showing us exactly what model you have. That's right. This isn't just all models. This is your model. So if this was your firewall, I can see right off the bat, and I can walk you through and say, hey, right here on the port that says WAN, what is it that we have here? And I can walk you through what you need to do. And I can see everything that it's plugged into, and whether that link is up or down, and whether it thinks it should be up or down. And it sounds real crazy, but this is such a wonderful system and approach just to being able to help us help you. Whether or not you can see it, because it is a little dim, I can even show you that there's a power button sitting right here. And all of those, we're actually remoted into the device. We're not just looking at the reports, so I can get live telemetry on the device as well. Apart from everything else that a lot of devices are doing, I love that we have access to everything we need to do. There is SD-WAN features, VoIP. There's a whole bunch of quality of service features built right into the system. And they can, they've got really great feature set right out of the box. We have threat prevention, where we can go through, we can make sure that everything is staying safe. It's powered by their own AI system that allows us to detect things before they're even a problem that we can find out. This one's getting ready to update at 1 a.m. We can obviously make these schedule. We usually have them scheduled 2 to 3 times a day. But we can go through and do that. IPS protections, we can go through anything that has a known vulnerability. We can track, and this device will attempt to thwart those types of sort of vulnerabilities and mitigate those right off the bat. So such a great, simple little device, and yet at the same token, it is so, so powerful. The really interesting thing about the checkpoint approach is that, yes, we put in a firewall that says checkpoint on it. You saw it up in here. This is what it looks like. It's got their brand name on it, but actually Checkpoint is a software company. So yes, they sell me this hardware. It's customized for it, but they're software first, which means there are so much troubleshooting and so much recovery tools just built into these devices that it's incredible what you can do right out of the box. Again, this is a lab unit, so you don't see any devices that we've had connected here. If I connect my iPad, you'd be able to see all of the different computers. I could get information that it's learned about them. I can take a look at some monitoring data as well as extending monitoring. What a wonderful, just refreshing system to be able to provide us. And if I could show you some of our some of the competitors we've used, it's just a well laid out, well thought out, responsive system that really it's refreshing to use. And so that's kind of the heart of what we're looking for with Checkpoint. And then the other piece that we have is that because Checkpoint is such a strong security first company, the platform by which they have built an ecosystem, this is just one leg. This is just one component of the Checkpoint environment that allows us to secure your environments. We mentioned they already, if you've heard of Avanan, we're already using Avanan. They actually own Checkpoint, or they're owned by Checkpoint now. And so we've already been using that. That's the email collaboration. There's zero trust VPN features. There's endpoint protection. There's so much. And then as a provider, all of our security is all backed by Threat Cloud and all through one single security portal. What a really amazing system that they've put together. And it's one of the few that actually delivers a lot on what they promise. And so I'm really excited for this partnership with these Checkpoint devices, excited to see them get into your hands. But if you're looking at a great way to protect your network, these are just stunning devices, and can't wait to get them in your hands. Reach out to us. Let us know. Let's talk a little bit more about Checkpoint. And that's it on the Checkpoint Quantum Spark series.